How's it going, everyone? Hopefully you're doing well. Welcome back to another Bond Store video. In this video, we're going to be kind of updating from where we left off last time. Not really too much has changed from those kind of tanks. A few buffs here and there, but overall, most of that video still remains the same with kind of what I recommend and what I don't. So we are going to be quickly going over some of those and just talking about them briefly, but then we're going to be talking about the new tanks that got added. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so first things first, how do we get to the Bond Store? We go to the store page and we go down to the bottom on the left hand side and you'll be greeted with the Bond Store. From here you can see all the different tanks. I obviously have these two in my garage, and these ones that you can see that I can buy for credits are because I have them but I sold them. So if you sell a tank that's within the Bond Store and it's not within kind of the tech tree or anything like that, then you can buy them back whenever you want for credits. So let's go over these quickly. Liberté, yes, good tank. It is good. The gun's a little bit troll, but you can't have everything. It's got very, very good hull armor. Would I recommend it? Yes. The problem is that you do need kind of a good crew to make it work, but that's like with most of the tanks in the game. So it's a good heavy tank. It is a good, solid kind of frontline heavy tank. You just got to learn to hide your cupola. You can do it for your gun. But overall, it's a very, very nice tank. This is a tier 5. I've got it for free. I wouldn't recommend buying this for bonds at all. Do not waste your bonds. I believe it's like 1,500 bonds, exactly the same as the T34S. I don't recommend these two that you buy for bonds at all. Like 1.5k bonds can be spent towards bond equipment, for example, or even putting that towards a better tank on this list. The hydrostat is quite nice because it's a rarer tank in the game, or at least it used to be a rarer tank in the game. So if you are a tank collector, then of course you're going to buy all of these. But if you're speaking about this objectively, it's not worth 3,000 bonds, especially when it's double the T34S. Doesn't really make sense. Like, the T34S is fine. It's not a great tank, but it's comparable to the hydrostat, and it's the same tier, and it's a medium tank. Like, you'd be kind of stupid if you went for this rather than this. The IS-2S, a lot of people got this for free. I believe it was from Homefront? I can't remember, but you could get this for free from somewhere. So a lot of people do have this tank for free. Is it worth bonds? No. I don't recommend you get this for bonds. I don't even know how much it would be for bonds. But either way, whatever it's valued at, whether it be like 5,000, 6,000 bonds, because considering it's a tier 7, it's not worth it. It's just not. Not when for 8,000 you can get a full-blooded tier 8 premium. Speaking of which, the Alpine Tiger, here's the problem with the Alpine Tiger. It does get preferential matchmaking, which is really, really nice. And it did recently get buffed so that it does get a little bit more pen. This used to be 175 pen, and it was awful. It is fine as long as you don't expect too much from it. I would actually kind of stick this in like the recommended category, but also not. So it's like in the middle between the two. I wouldn't say don't get it, but I wouldn't say, oh yeah, you must get it. Because for this tank, its real kind of benefit is that it only meets tier 9's maximum. And it does have enough armor to deal with tier 9's most of the time. Obviously, if they shoot gold at you, you're just going to get obliterated no matter what. But that's just the nature of most heavy tanks in this game now. As soon as they press the 2 key, your armor is kind of irrelevant, but that's just the game. The only reason why I wouldn't recommend it is because of the gun. It is quite derpy. It doesn't have good accuracy. It doesn't have great DPM. You're looking at 2k, as you see here. I believe this is with 100% crew. And yeah, 250 premium, though, is quite nice because it is heat. Yes, high explosive anti-tank. So it can work, and you can have good game in it, and you get a cool style as well. For 8,000 bonds, I would say that, yeah, it's just in the middle. It depends on if you really like this type of playstyle. It goes fast when it's downhill, but because it's got 13 pound to weight, you're not going to get anywhere too quickly. And also, it doesn't have great view range. So you're going to feel like you're struggling a little bit in that department. But overall, it's okay. The Panzer 58 Mutz, I've already spoke about. I have it on my other account. I think it's a good tank. I think it's worth 8,000 bonds. But if you don't like that playstyle, then it's not worth it to you. So obviously, all of these tanks are going to be what you kind of want in a tank. And the Mutz, you can play it as kind of a sniping medium tank, a bit like in the role of a Leo, because it does get decent. It's not great, but 212 standard rounds, and then you do get APCR as the premium rounds, which have 259. You're looking at a decent overall kind of gun. And yes, it's not great DPM wise. You know, you're looking at roughly the same DPM as like an Alpine Tiger, but the dispersion is really, really nice, and you can get this down to about 0.29 or so. So it is a good tank, and I like it. Also, the hull can be quite bouncy, but don't rely on it. Like you just think that every single shell that's going to enter your tank is going to pen, or every single shell that hits your tank is going to pen. Now, moving on to the Patriot, it is a good tank, and I still recommend it. A lot like I recommend the Liberté. Most of the time, it is a toss-up between the Liberté and the Patriot, which one you want. I would say that the Patriot can be more flexible because of the fact that it does get more view range, and it is slightly faster because it has a slightly better power to weight. However, the gun is kind of similar in the fact that it's a derpy gun. It will go everywhere. It's not going to be something that is super, super reliable. But you do get decent standard rounds, a lot like the Liberté, and the dispersion is okay, I guess. Like, you do get more DPM, that is true, but it's just, it is a mix-up between the two. The Liberté is going to be that true kind of heavy tank, whereas this can be played like a medium tank. So if you do want something that's a little bit more flexible, then go for the Patriot. But if you do want that true kind of heavy tank where you have good frontal armor, and also the Liberté's lower plate is 10 times better than this. The frontal hull armor on this tank is nothing compared to the Liberté. And you can bait a lot of shells around corners and stuff with the Liberté, whereas this, you can't really do that. Nor can you really side scrape in the Patriot. So if you do want a true heavy tank, then get the Liberté. But if you want something a little bit more flexible, Patriot. And then we have the Chrysler, which is probably the greatest heavy tank out of all of them, apart from the fact that the gun is absolutely awful. What I mean by that is, if this thing had a gun which had really, really nice standard pen, I would recommend this thing in a heartbeat. But the fact that it gets 198 pen, it is not enough in nowadays world of tanks. Considering that this will meet tier 10s, yes, you can just spam gold and go for 260 pen, and it's great. The armor on this thing is broken. I'm not going to lie. It is stupid, the armor on this thing. You can side scrape around corners and no one will be able to pen you, not even tier 10s, unless they fire premium at your turret. Yeah, this thing is a bit stupid. It goes at 35, which is more than fast enough. It even has 20 pound to weight for whatever reason. So yeah, you might be thinking, okay, well, I'll just get this thing then. It sounds great. The problem is that you are going to meet tier 10s. And when you meet tier 10s, they will make short work of you in no time at all. When you meet tier 6s, yes, it's just it's not even really fun, to be honest. It's so broken that you just go in front of tier 6s and just, they can't do anything. It's like a 279 against tier 8s that don't have any premium rounds. Like, it's stupid. I'm not going to say that you shouldn't get this, because it can work, but I'm not going to say that I recommend this tank either, because most of the time, you're never going to be able to get those situations where it can be truly useful. And the fact that you get 198 pen, you are even going to struggle against tier 8s with that sort of pen. Considering that it's a heavy tank with this pen, that's the issue. It's a lot like the Alpine Tiger, but the Alpine Tiger will never meet tier 10s. Whereas this thing will meet tier 10s and will get obliterated by them, and you'll just keep bouncing unless you spend a lot of credits on ammunition, which isn't going to be an issue if you're that way inclined, because most of the time you can just fire gold in tier 8 premiums and you won't lose any credits. Hell, you even make profit, but you won't make as much as if you fired standard rounds, for example. Now, they recently added this Senlac. Yeah, don't get this. I'm just going to say it. Do not get this. Like, it's not worth it. This tank is big. It has very little concealment, considering that it's a light tank. It is fast, yes. However, it doesn't have DPM. It doesn't really have penetration either. Even on the premium rounds, 223, but that's light tanks for you. They're never going to really get, you know, really good pen, unless you're using like a Hawk 30. The problem is that there's just so many better light tanks than this tank. And for purely grinding credits, I don't feel it's worth it to buy this tank when you could just get a better tank for, you know, the same amount. And sure, it's going to be a different class, but I feel like you would earn more credits, even though it's a different class. And let's be honest, you don't usually buy them for the crew training. The M46KR, this recently got a buff. I believe this is actually okay now. I think got DPM buff. Yeah, and this is over 2k. This is quite nice. I wouldn't say I recommend it, because the problem is that it's a lot like a bit of a faster Patriot, but you're then sacrificing the gun as well. Like, I don't see the point of you getting this when you could get a Patriot. Yes, I know they're not the same class. It's so hard to recommend when you couldn't get the Patriot just for the exact same price. You sacrifice armor for speed, and you then lose the gun as well. So I don't think this is worth it when the Patriot exists. But if you do want to have a little bit of a faster kind of Patriot, and you will lose some of the ability with your gun, you don't get very high premium pen. Like, that premium pen is actually close to the Patriot's standard pen. Like, that's kind of mental. Moving on to the IS-6B. Yeah, this thing is exactly the same kind of situation as the Alpine Tiger. I wouldn't recommend you get this thing over the Alpine Tiger, though, because the Alpine Tiger, in my opinion, is better. There's just, it gets no view range. It will get penned randomly everywhere, and unless you're meeting tier 6s, it's kind of useless. The gun is also a lot more derpy. Fine, you get a little bit more DPM than the Alpine Tiger. I remember when I was marking the normal IS-6, not the Black Edition, it was just a nightmare. Like, you would have good games, and then you would just get, you know, tier 9s that with 340 heat, and you just get obliterated. And you needed premium rounds to kind of do anything in the tank. The premium rounds on this tank are 225. It is by far one of the worst guns I have ever had the misfortune to play with. It is awful. It will miss shots that are fully aimed at 100 meters, and it just goes, well, I was actually aiming for that tower over there on a different map. Now, another new one, the T103. This is okay, I guess is the best way of putting it. The thing is, the gun is nice. The gun is really nice. Like, 258 standard pen, 307 premium pen. It's not too derpy, because you can get it down with different equipment. You know, by the time that you put vents on it, rammer, and then you can put IRM or what's it called? Improved aiming. You can get this down to a decent amount. However, it is a big tank. Like, it's big. And that big profile, going not so fast, it does have some form of armor, but you do have a capoda up here. And let's be honest, by the time that people actually shoot you, they're just going to shoot the turret ring and it's going to pen. So, yeah, you don't really have armor, because as soon as if they stopped and just looked at your tank for more than 2 seconds or 1 second, they'll realize where to pen, which is the turret ring, or right here. So it's not the worst choice, okay? If you want a TD, then I'd recommend it, right? Because there's no real other TDs here. In fact, is there any TDs here? It is not an awful choice, is what I'm trying to say. It's fine. And I'd recommend it if you want a tank destroyer, especially if you've gone down like the Object 268 V4 or Object 268. Be careful, because I don't know what the crew situation is. That looks pretty normal, so that's fine. But it's okay for a tank destroyer. We'll just leave it at that. The guard I've already spoke about. It's good, but it kind of, I don't know. It's kind of weird. They did give it a buff, so it's got a little bit more DPM now. It's not been my playstyle, but if it's yours, you can kind of play it like a sniper. It gets good dispersion, not so great aim time, but doesn't really matter too much when you stick V-stab and stuff like that on it. It doesn't have great view range either. However, it is fast enough. It does have okay hit points, and 390 alpha is always really nice. And you also get 248mm of premium pen, which is APCR. Is it any good? It goes at 1,000. Okay, that's actually a bit of a disappointment, considering that this is meant to be a sniper tank, and it goes at 800 for standard and 1,000 for premium. That's kind of a bit disappointing, I'm not going to lie. But if you are into these type of tanks where you've gone down like the Object 416 and you got the K91, then maybe you'll like this. I don't know. It can be a bit troll with its armor. If you don't hit this cupola, you'll probably end up bouncing off the turret. And the hull armor is not great, and you will get set on fire a lot if it enters the front. So keep that in mind. But it's not a bad one. I don't recommend it, but it is not the worst choice that you could make. Yes, the KV4 Kresl. No. Okay? I've already explained this. This thing is funny to start off with. It gets really nice premium rounds. However, you can pen it in the cupola. You can pen it at the front. What can I even say that's nice about this tank? The thing is, it's really good at side scraping, and that's about it. The problem being that you've got a massive cupola at the top here that you can easily pen, and I believe with premium rounds you can just go straight through the front of this thing. Actually, let me just double check that. Okay, so when you're looking at it from the front, I've just updated myself with how this tank actually performs. Why is this gun not straight? Oh god. Okay, that's really off-putting. I've updated myself with this tank. Cupola, yes, you can pen it. And you need about 155mm of pen to go through this plate here, and 180 to go through the lower plate here. Nice. Good tank. And when you're side scraping, it makes zero difference. I can't believe this tank is so bad. You only need 230 to go straight through the gun mantlet. So, yeah. This thing is not very good. And I don't recommend it. It gets poor accuracy, it gets bad DPM, it gets good hit points at least. And yes, sure, you do get nice penetration, but it's just, it doesn't even have view range. Okay, now this thing actually got a buff recently. So is it any good now? No? Just no? Like, why would you play this tank? Seriously. It's a genuinely serious question I have for people that play this tank. It gets 270 premium pen, 221 standard. Its gun is god-awful, alright? It would just miss more than the IS-6's gun. I just don't understand why people say this is good, or anyone that says it's good. The majority of people that I know all say it is awful, and it's true. It's a bad tank. Sure, it got a gun depression buff of -7 now, so you can kind of play ridgelines a little bit better. However, it's still not a good tank. It is a stock IS-8. That's what it is. And if people remember the IS-8, you know how bad that was. It gets no view range, and it's just... I mean, sure, it goes at 42. Great. But it gets 14 power to weight. And you don't really get that many hit points to compensate for it. You don't get great DPM. You have an aim time of 3 seconds, which you might as well go make a cup of tea while it aims. And yeah, the reload time is still very, very long for 390 alpha. It's not a good tank. And then we move on to the tier 10s. The FV215B. Is it worth it? No, it's not worth 12,000 bonds. I'm not going to lie to you. It is just not. It gets good view range. It gets good hit points. It gets great DPM. It gets a great gun. It gets a super conks gun. So it is just an insanely good gun. It's fast enough, I suppose. I mean, it goes at roughly the same speed as a super conk, but it has no armor. Like, it gets the stock Conqueror's turret, and you can pen it right here every single time. And considering that it's meant to be a side-scraping tank where you go around the corner like this, and then you get your turret and point it towards you, towards the enemy. The weak spot being there, not the best tank design, considering that that's how it's meant to be played. So, yeah, I don't think this is a very good tank. Not to mention that if you get shot through the front here, you're going to get set on fire. Like, you know there's 25% RNG. You might as well just be like 75% RNG for the chance of fire. Like, this thing will get set on fire a lot. So is it worth 12,000 bonds? If you really, really love this tank, then yeah, get it. But if you actually want a tank that is good, then don't get it. Just get the Super Conqueror. It's free. The 121B, get it. It is now a god tier tank. Like, it's stupidly good. Like 261 standard pen, really, really nice, and it's APCR. And then you get 350 millimeters of heat rounds. It is a god tier tank. It gets very, very nice dispersion. It gets a really nice rate of fire. Great DPM, like 3,000 DPM. If you max this out, you get 3,855. I mean, we could add the rammer as well, so you nearly get 4,000 DPM. Yeah, with 0.28 accuracy, 5.9 second reload time, and the fact that you get 350 millimeters of heat. Right. Not to mention that the way I have it set up, you also get 508 meters of view range. This thing's mental. So yes, I strongly recommend this tank, actually. 420 base view range means that you do not need coated optics ever. Yeah, this thing is just a beast. It really is. It gets really, really nice armor as well. Turret armor, you only can pen the cupola now. Hull armor, standard rounds for most tanks aren't going to pen it as long as you're kind of at an angle a little bit, or you're going hold down and using some of the gun depression. It does only get -5 degrees of gun depression, but this thing is a monster now. You might as well make it the 121 beast, because that is what it is now. And finally, moving back onto the old M60, it got a little bit of buff to the turret armor and the hull armor and whatnot. And yes, you do still get the 420 meters view range, exactly the same as the 121B. Yeah, like, this thing is still really, really good. If you're going to pick one though, it's going to be the 121B. If you do want kind of an American style of the Leo, then the M60 is your choice. Gets 350 heat, 268 standard rounds. It's nice. Yeah. Okay, so I took the time to go and get the not recommended ones, the okay ones, and the recommended. I will leave this spreadsheet, a link to it in the description and in the pinned comment if you would like to go and view it. But yeah, these are what I think about the tanks. Obviously, we have the Liberté, the Poacher, the 121B, and the M60 being the recommended ones, as they are the best, in my opinion. And then we have kind of, in the OK section, you could put these in the recommended as well. It's down to your play style and how you like to play the game. So they're not awful tanks, and I would never say don't get them. These ones I would always say, yes, it's worth it. And in here, just don't bother with them. Like, they're just not worth your time. They're not worth the amount of bonds that you would waste on getting them. And it's much better to either get one of the other ones or invest in bond equipment than get one of these. So hopefully you did enjoy. I will make another video when the bond store gets updated again. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think my recommendations are wrong. Yeah, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, as it does help me out greatly. And I will see you all in the next one.